Did you know that WinDBG can run arbitrary shell commands? Let me show you how to use it to aid debugging. Now, before we start, a word of caution. Running arbitrary shell commands can be a security issue. However, since we are all using WinDBG, I am going to assume that we are all very skilled at using and maintaining our computers. So let's go ahead and use WinDBG's shell capabilities. So basically, why use the shell? The reason is that sometimes it's much simpler to send the output of WinDBG to another tool that we know can process it, rather than try to find a plugin or script WinDBG in some convoluted way. It might be simpler just to take the output of WinDBG, send it to a program, have the program process the output and send it back to WinDBG. Okay, let me switch over to my instance of WinDBG. What I have over here is I have an instance of WinDBG in which I've opened a memory dump for analysis. The actual memory dump doesn't matter because what I'm going to show is how to use the shell to filter some of the output of commands from WinDBG. Okay, let me run a command that would dump really a lot of text. So I'm going to type in ~k, and what this command does is that it's going to dump out the stack of every thread. Now the command has run there ~k, and the output is pretty verbose as you're going to get a lot of lines of text that is going to come out of WinDBG. Now, if I want to filter that text, just say I want to get a subset of the text, I could probably try to find a plugin or a command that can work in WinDBG to filter that text. Now, it's a bit tedious to get a lot of different kind of plugins for WinDBG, and it's pretty tedious to script WinDBG. But I have another alternative, which is to just use an existing command that exists on my computer and just use the shell to pipe to that command. So for this example, I'm going to search for the word Windows console stream over here, this Windows console stream. So what I can do is I can start the shell by typing .shell, that is to start a shell, -ci. ci is to induce a command in WinDBG. What you put after CI is a double quote, and in the quote you put the command that you want. This command will run in WinDBG first, then the output of the command will be sent to the rest of the string. In my case, I put findstr Windows console stream. Findstr is an executable in Windows which can take in an input of text. It will find the line that you have specified and it will filter only for that line. It is like using grep in Linux or Unix. It's exactly the same thing. I don't know why it's just not called grep, but it's called findstr, but it does exist in Windows. So if I run this command like that, what it's going to do is, it's going to run the command and it's going to filter only for Windows console stream, and only the lines that contains Windows console stream will be displayed in the output. Now, what exactly is happening is pretty straightforward. This part where the command runs, the output is then taken, a shell is opened, this part of the command then runs in the shell, and whatever the output is returned back to WinDBG. That's why WinDBG says process exited at the very end. The process that exited is not the WinDBG process itself, but rather the shell that it opened, it exited, and whatever text is in that shell is taken and piped back into WinDBG. To get the shell to work, you must use double quotes over here. I don't know why, it's part of the command. If you don't put double quotes, the command just won't work. It's hard-coded to use double quotes. Another example which I can show you is what if we just launch the command to find the string win in LM. Same thing as well. -ci LM means list modules. I'm going to list all the modules and then I'm going to find for the string win and output just the lines for the string win. Using the shell this way is a bit more simpler than just typing LM. If you just type LM, you're going to get pretty a lot of lines. It's useful as well. In fact, I'll just type LM and scroll the screen usually. But if you really had extreme verbose output and you wanted to filter, you could just start a shell and do findstr. Now, the previous example was pretty trivial. We're just running a command and taking the output. The shell is actually more advanced than that. You don't necessarily have to filter text. You can run any command you want. So for example, if I type shell dir, what's going to happen is that it's going to execute dir directly on the shell. If I do not specify -ci and run a command, then WinDBG will just run the shell without any input. So for example, .shell dir will actually perform a dir on my hard disk, and whatever the output is, it will be piped back into WinDBG. If I scroll up over here, I can see that the output is pretty verbose. But the thing to remember about this is that it executes the shell, somewhere about here, it executes the shell immediately in the directory that was the working directory of WinDBG. In my case, because I launched WinDBG from the start menu, I get that C:\Windows System32 is the shell. Be very careful. This is why security matters with the shell. Because the shell is launching inside any folder or any directory that is possible, it is very possible to run a command that damages your system. So be very careful when you use the shell. In my case, I just did a dir, which is harmless, but you could run more malicious commands that could damage your computer. Now, when the shell runs, what happens as well is that WinDBG actually waits for a short period of time to get the output of the shell command. If the shell command has any input that is needed from keyboard, this could potentially hang the .shell. I recommend do not run commands that need input. It is possible to type the input into WinDBG and send it along, but I was unsuccessful in getting that to work all the time. So I'm not going to show that technique because it's kind of a bit dodgy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just stick to using commands that do not need any other input other than text input. Now, .shell is possible to be used within breakpoints. It is possible to use within trace points, and the possibilities are endless. You can script .shell because it is a meta command of WinDBG. Anything with the dot in the front is a meta command, so you can use it inside any other command. So the .shell is pretty powerful, and I'm pretty sure you can think of very advanced usage for the .shell. I myself have used it really a lot, especially when debugging DCOM, where I need to launch executables, and I find it easier to just use a breakpoint in WinDBG and put .shell to launch the executable. You can use it to register executables. You can basically run any command you want. But remember of the security implications of using .shell. Now, the .shell command has other parameters as well. You can use an input file to add inputs, and you can use an input file to have even extra meta commands. I want to save that for a future video in which I show how to script WinDBG, because generally having a file of commands is used for scripting WinDBG. I felt that it will be a bit too complex just to show the .shell command. The way I use it has always been to just use the -ci and put a meta command in there or put a WinDBG command. But I've never used it with an actual input file, so I'm going to omit it for this video just to keep this video short. But you can actually write all your commands in a text file and then just use .shell to run the text file. It's a bit more advanced, so I thought I'll skip it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you have used this command before. I use it quite a lot with COM debugging, but I generally don't really use it that much because it always seems that there's something in WinDBG that does the job simpler than sending it to an external command. But with COM programming, I remember using it really a lot in order to start extra applications or start Windows services or stop Windows services, things that you would not expect a WinDBG plugin to be able to do. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if you have actually used this command before. And gentle reminder to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and give a like if you like the content. As always, it's been a pleasure bringing you this information. I am High Voice, signing out.